Okay, we're recording. It is week 10. Can you believe it? We are already in week 10. That's crazy. Today we're doing an algo and a demo. It's algo really lecture. We just say algo demo, but it's an algo. And then what it's going to be is just we're continuing this idea of, algorithms, understanding arrays / lists. I'll get into that in just a second. And just kind of understanding and practicing. What does that look like? What does that mean? And how do we kind of handle these? What are some tips and tricks for that? One thing just to kind of show is you do have 2 core assignments this week, so please make sure that you are working hard at those. And then again, a discussion question is due this week. And then what you're going to do is you're going to read on relationships. This is not a, this is a relationship in a database, not, friendships or romantic relationships. So what we're going to be doing on Tuesday is we're going to be building out something sort of similar to what we already have. In fact, we might even just take what we already have and modularize it. What I mean by that is we might just add in a relationship. So maybe we want to know which user created each video game. So we're going to go in and we're going to talk about relationships. We're going to see how we can connect those, build those up, and how we can do some of these things in relation to a relationship within our database. So when we're querying data, when we're grabbing data, how we can handle that, because there's a unique way that we can do that. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. We'll probably take 2 lectures, if I'm honest. It's just quite a bit, and I want to make sure we go through it as slow as possible. Then the following week, we'll jump into validations. So we will be creating a user. So because as part of your exam, you're going to need to have a user. And then with that, we're going to have validation. So we're getting stuff from our form. And we want to make sure that data is good before we do anything with our database, before we are pinging our database or saving something. We don't want to save bad data. So we're going to add in some validations. The last thing we're going to do is our login and registration. This is our encryption of our passwords, making sure the data is stored well. Then we've got a belt prep week. Can you believe it? So we're already almost there. And then our belt exam opens that day or that Friday. So we are very close to the belt exam. We've really got 3 full weeks of learning more material. Then we have 1 week of just our prep. I'll go through, we'll iterate through some things and make sure we know it. And then the belt exam is happening. So if you guys can already believe it, we are cruising. We are almost done with even this program, just this class itself. So that's what to expect. Any questions on expectations and what to kind of think through?
I have a question. Well,
Yeah.
so let's say once we're done, are we still gonna have access to the platform, or that's
Mhm.
gonna be it?
You do, yeah. I believe it's 6 months. I believe it's 6 months, but you have access to the things that you've already, like things that you did. So Python, um, you're gonna have projects and algorithms, Python and web fundamentals. Now you're not gonna get like, we do a bunch of different other languages. You don't get everything. That's part of what we call the alumni pass. Now that costs money. But if you just want Python, then yeah, you'll keep your stuff. I believe it's 6 months after graduation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I've got a real algorithm here that I wanted to do, but before we do that, I kind of wanted to break it down just to show you, maybe kind of build on it. So if we don't get to here, then that's okay. I just want to kind of start here and we can think through some things. So the real algorithm is create a function that takes in a list of numbers and reverses it in place. Now, in place means that you cannot create a new list or use a list slicing method. You need to modify the original list. So for example, if I were to take in, reverse 1, 2, 3, 4, the output is going to be 4, 3, 2, 1. And this is the original list, not like a new one, right? That I say like newly reversed or something. And I just kind of popped from the end. So that's our goal. If we get there today, that's great. If not, we'll build up to it. But I first wanted to kind of break it down. And again, I think just take one piece because this is sort of a crucial piece. I want to take one piece and then we can kind of build on that. So I said create a function that takes in a list. This is going to be a list of numbers and reverses the first and the last values. So all we want to do is, let's say I've got a, for example, I've got a reverse and it takes in 1, 2, 5, 9. That's going to give me 9, oops,
9.
9, 2, 5, 1. So I just want to reverse these two values here. Just want to reverse these two values. Okay. So let's do some pseudocode. Does everybody understand what we're trying to do?
I have a
Yes.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you said reverse, right? And
Or trade, I guess, really. Not reverse, but trade.
oh, okay.
Or
Now
swaps. Swaps would be a better word.
I get it now.
We want to swap these. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a little confusing. We just want to swap these last value, the first value and the last value. So 9 and 1. That's it. Okay. So we like to do pseudocode. Can anybody remind me what pseudocode is?
It's right.
It's based,
Plain English.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
What did you
writing your
say, Kevin?
code out, right, just
Yeah.
write pretty much the same thing that he said.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, right? It's just writing it out in English or whatever, kind of putting our thoughts out there. Sometimes it's just like, I think I'm gonna have to use this. I think I'm gonna have to use this. I don't know what order. I don't know when I'm gonna use it, but I know I'm gonna have to use these tools. Just kind of getting that out there so then we can build from there. So using pseudocode, where do you guys think we should start? If we're just trying to do this, taking a list and it swaps the first and last values, what would you start it with pseudocode?
Did we create a function? Yeah.
Yeah. I would even go as far as to say, create a function that takes in a list. It's a great first step. Now that we've created the function, we're in sort of the meat and potatoes of the function. What do you think we should do? But let's try to break down, what is the question asking us to do?
We are swapping.
We're swapping. Yeah, exactly. So if we're going to swap these values, what are some things that are true about that process?
Are we gonna like assign to a variable?
We can. Yeah. Let's even think about, how do we access values? Like if I just said, if I gave you this list right here and I said I wanted the number 2, or let's do this. I don't know, just to kind of help. Okay. Here's my list here, this little listy. If I said I wanted you to get me the 9, what would you do? I want you to print me the 9. What would I do there? What would I print 9?
So I'm thinking, but are we gonna create an empty list?
We're not creating an empty list. If I let's kind of let's forget about swapping for right now. Let's say that all it was I was given a list and I wanted to print the 4th value. What would I do? How would I print this?
Just that whole list.
Just the 9.
Well, you would write print
Uh-huh.
parentheses
Uh-huh.
listy
Exactly.
bracket
Yep.
0, 1, 2, 3.
Exactly, Kevin.
3.
Okay. Yeah. You're exactly right. So this is if I do this, that's exactly what I was looking for, Kevin. Great job. If I do that, then that gives me this number right here, right? So we know based off of this ability, if I'm going to grab these values here, do you think I'm going to need to use some sort of indexing? If I want to be able to get the
Yeah.
first and the last value, exactly, right? So I'm going to say use indexing to identify the first and last values. Okay. So again, let's take this example. Let's say Listy is our thing. If I was going to just print off the first and last values of Listy, what would I do? I wanted to print the first and the last value. Think about what we just did. How would I get that number 1 and number 8?
Should we say like print
Mm-hmm.
listy
Uh-huh.
0,
Exactly.
and then
So
is it
that's going to give me the first value, right?
yes, and then
Perfect. Uh-huh.
is it print listy
Okay.
is it -1 or
Close.
-8?
So there's kind of 2 ways we can do this, right? That's
Yeah.
a great idea, Jeffrey. We can go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so if I said 6, that's going to get me that last value here, right?
Oh, okay.
But let's say I'm creating this function and we want this to be dynamic, meaning we want it to accept lists of all sizes, whether there's 2 or whether there's 3 values or there's 3 million values, right? So if I hard code it like this, does that accomplish that dynamic ability?
No, it doesn't.
Mm-mm, it doesn't.
And the reason why is because you need to find a value or something that prints the last entry of any list in kind of a generic sense. So
Yeah,
yeah, a list that a value that corresponds to the last entry of any list of any size, whereas listies of index 0 would correspond to the first value of any list regardless of the size, and that needs to hold true for the last value.
exactly, Kevin. That is to a T. That's perfect. Exactly. 0, we can be confident that we can hard code that because if any list of any size, if it has any values, there's going to be something at 0, right? Someone's okay. But you're exactly right, Kevin. That was spot on. If we are wanting to get the end of the last value of a list and we want that to be dynamic, then we need to figure out a way that we can dynamically find the last value of that list. So what is a way we could do that? I've showed you this little trick before, but what is a way we could do that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time, please?
Yeah. So you're exactly right, Kevin. The 0, we can hard code 0 because we can assume that if we're getting any
Right.
list, doesn't matter. There's always gonna be one value. To get the last value and to make it dynamic, there's a little trick we can do.
Does it involve a negative number?
It doesn't involve a negative number. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I don't know what trick we would do to put a value that would correspond to the last entry in a generic sense for any size list.
Okay. Let's think about it this way. Do you know, Jeffrey?
Quick question, Will. You said
Yeah.
it doesn't involve a negative number, like targeting 8?
Not necessarily, no, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Didn't we do something similar to this with our last algorithm?
Of course, I
Mhm.
think so too.
Yeah, we did.
We did
So,
something strikingly similar to this.
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to build on so if you, I don't know if you noticed the last couple, I've tried to build on those and take the
Right.
same tips. That way we have that. So I think once I say it, you
Okay.
guys will be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Let me ask, we said that this was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and position 6, right? That's going to get me this 8.
Right.
How many
Yes.
values are in my list?
There are 7.
7, exactly. Is
So
there anything that gets me what's a trick I could do to get how many values my list has?
actually I think I might be able to figure this out because it kind of reminds me of what I was doing back when I was taking calculus and I was
Mm-hmm.
going over infinite sequences and series.
Mm-hmm.
And there were certain formulas that we did where we were dealing with that Greek letter summation or
Mm-hmm.
sigma, which stands for summation, and you have a start, a stop, and then
Mm-hmm.
um um n-1 or something like that.
Yeah. What I love that, Kevin. What is a built-in function though that we have that just tells me how long my list is or how many values?
Um,
If I said this, what is that value going to be? If I said len of listy, what is that going to equal?
Is it none?
It's going to be a number, but len of listy, remember len gets me how many values are in my list.
oh, it's right. The
The len of,
len function. Yes.
so if we know that the len and I pass in my list, but if I take the length, it's always going to give me the amount of values in my list. That kind of checks the first mark of the dynamic, right? Because it doesn't matter if there's 3 or 3 million, it's going to tell me how many there are. But there's this difference right here, right? This value is 6 and this len is 7. So what could I do to assure that I get this last value? What mathematical, there's two things. There's an operator and then a number that gets me this, that completes this. 7 blank blank equals 6. What do I have to do to 7 for it to equal 6?
7 - 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we've established that in this case, len of listy equals 7. And 7 minus 1 equals 6, which is the index of my last number. And because 7 and len of listy are the same, could I say len of listy minus 1 equals 6? If len of listy equals 7? 7.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, right? I could say that. So let's go even further. If this expression, and I'm not putting this as a bracket for anything, but I'm just, if that expression is giving me 6, right? That's all that's equating to 6. Then could I say listy of len listy minus 1. What is that going to give me?
The last value.
Exactly, right? Because what is this equating to? What is this solve to?
Right,
Len
because
of
it's one less.
7 minus 1, right? So what our computer does is it says, okay, listy. And then instead of us having an index value, we have this equation. And so it does that equation and says 6. So then it becomes listy of 6. So doing the len of list minus 1 gets me the last value of a list. Let's try it with another list and just kind of confirm that that is true. If I say, vector, I don't want to say vector. I think it might be a keyword. Let's say unicorn equals 1, 2, 3. We know that if I say unicorn of 0, what is that going to get me? The first value, right?
Mhm.
If I wanted to get the last value, do we think that that works? Our new len of listy, 0, 1, 2. What is the len of unicorn going to be?
3.
Exactly. So if I said unicorn of position len unicorn minus 1, what is this going to equate to?
2.
2, exactly. And so it's basically saying unicorn of position 2. And what position is my last value? In this list?
3.
What position? That's the value. 0, 1, 2. So a trick we can do. Now I might say array and I might say list. The reason is because when we're talking about data structures, usually it's referred to as an array. Python just calls it a list. They're the same thing. But a trick when we're dealing, and this trick works when we're in JavaScript, it's just an array trick. When we want to get the last value of an array or a list, we could say the length of that list minus 1. And then we cast that to an index position, just like we did here. And that will always get me the last value, no matter what size my list is. Makes it dynamic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. Great. So we've established, let me clear this out. We know now, I'm going to kind of get rid of unicorn here because it maybe is a little bit more confusing. So if I wanted to get the first value, we know that it's listy of 0. And if I wanted to get the last value, what am I going to do? How do I get the last value? No wrong answers, guys. We just did it.
Oh, it's 6. Right?
It is, but how do we make it dynamic? What we just did.
Len,
Yeah.
we would go print in parentheses len listy, len listy
Mm-hmm.
minus 1.
Yes. Now, one thing I want to make sure that we're abundantly clear on, Kevin, is we'd say print listy, because we're still identifying my list. And then len of listy, you're exactly
Okay.
right, is going to get me the 7
Okay.
in this case, -1. And so that is the same as saying, because it's going to run this and it's going to get me the number 7. And then it's going to do 7 minus 1, which is going to be 6. So it's the same of listy 6, right? This is what it equates to.
Right.
But this allows me to get the length of my list. And again, if we had a smaller list, it's going to equate to whatever the size of that list is -1, or the last index position within my list. So it's not just this, because all this is going to do is give me 6. We have to then take that value, throw it into my list read at that index position, and then we can get our first and our last value. So if I were to say this and this, let me open up a new terminal. Oh, oops, let me. Hello. Okay. Now, if I run this, I get 1 right here, and I get 8, right? Now, what if I added this? What do you think we're going to get? I've changed the size. You think it's still going to work? It does, right? Doesn't matter, because if the size changes, well, then this length just changes and adapts to whatever the size is. So len of listy -1 is a way that we can always assure that we're getting that last value.
Oh,
Does that make sense, Jeffrey?
yes, it does.
Okay. So let's go back to our function. Does that make sense, Kevin? You getting it?
Yes.
Okay,
Excuse me.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like you're in your terminal right now to get 1 and 1, 2, 3, right?
Mhm.
Is that another way of running your terminal? Because I see the $ Python algo.py.
I have a $ because I'm in git bash.
Oh,
So it's just a type of terminal. But if I use a different one, you could use a different one. There's like command prompt or PowerShell. I just use git bash. So that's why I have the $.
oh, I see.
But yeah, just saying Python or Pi. I'm on Windows, so technically I could just say Pi and then the name of the file that I have access to, right? I'm in my week 9 algo.
Yeah.
Oops. It still will run it. That's just a way to run it. So it's going to run this entire thing. And because I just have establishing my variable and then my 2 prints, that's what it does. Cool. So let's create a function that takes in a list and swaps the first and last values. So let's go ahead and just create this function since we've identified how to do that. So we're going to say def swap. We'll just say swap. It's going to take in a list. Say some list. Now I can identify the first and the last values, but how would I swap them? How would I swap them? Better yet, before we get there, let's say that this was my list up here. and I didn't like because all of these are single digits and this is triple digits. I wanted to change this to the number 7. I want to change this last value to the number 7. How would I do that? How can I change this last value here?
Maybe like I'm gonna use us like swap list.
I just want to, yeah, we don't need to swap yet. We will, but let's pretend I just want to change this last value. What can I do? How can I reassign the value right here?
Reassign. Let's see, reassign the last value. So
We can even start a little bit easier. How do we reassign the first value?
would we use it like could we use a conditional for this one?
We don't need a conditional because we're not comparing anything. I'm just saying I want this value to be something different. Let's say I want it to also be 7. I know that this was like week 1. This was 9 weeks ago. We went over this stuff.
We're gonna use a for loop.
We're not going to use a for loop because we just want to change this one value, right? Remember, a conditional is when I need to have some sort of, I only want my code to do something certain when there's some sort of condition it needs to meet, right? If it was odd or even, then I want to change it, something like that. Or let's say that I wanted to change all the 1s to 7, then I would maybe use a conditional, Kevin. Jeffrey, I only want to do a for loop when I need to go through or do something repetitive over time, right? When I'm want to check each number, or kind of like what we were previously saying, if I wanted to say, hey, are you the number 1? I want to change it to 7. Okay, you are. Are you the number 1? Okay, you're not. Are you the number 1? You're not. That's where for loop comes in. All we want to do is we just want to take this value right here and I want to change it. We've identified how we can sort of or we've stated how we can identify this value by doing this, right?
Yeah.
So if I
Maybe-
wanted to change the value here, we can identify, how do I tell my computer I want to update or change a value there?
You would use the assignment operator.
Which is that, yeah. And then what? If I want to change it to
And
number 7.
so you would put listy
Mm-hmm.
brackets len listy in parentheses -1.
That would get the last value, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I wanted to get the last value and I said listy, len of listy -1, that's my
Yes.
last value. And I want
Yeah.
to change that. I want to assign a new value of 7 instead of 123. What would I do? So this grabs that value. How do I assign a value to it?
Using the assignment operator,
Which is
the equal sign.
exactly. And then I want it to be 7. What do I do?
Listy bracket 0.
Not quite yet. I just want to change this value to 7, to the number 7. I don't want it to
Right.
be 123 anymore. How can I assign, or in this case, reassign this value from
You
one?
would just put a 7 there.
Exactly, Kevin. Yeah. This is me
You know what?
assigning.
I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay, no problem. This is me assigning a new value. It's going to say, hey, go to the index position of whatever this is. In this case, is the last index position. in listy, and I want to change its value to 7. So Jeffrey, if I was going to do the same thing for the first value, what am I going to put here?
So it's gonna be len listy.
I just want to change this value to 7, to the number 7. I'm not swapping anything. I'm not doing anything. I just want to change it. Let's change it to the number 5. That might be easier. Let's just change this to number 5. That's the only thing we're trying to do.
So I guess
I'm
it's
gonna,
just 5.
yeah, we just put 5, right? We
Yeah.
identify the index that we want to reassign or assign in this case. And then we put the value we have. So now we've identified 2 things, right? We've
Yes.
identified how we can retrieve the value at the first value. And we've identified that how we can retrieve the last value. The second thing we've identified is how we can reassign the value at each position, right? I can reassign the last position to 7. I can reassign the first position to 5. And if I do this, let's say that I print listy, before my reassignments, and then I print listy again, let's see what we get. So we should get something that says 123, because we're printing 0, printing the last one, then we'll print our list, then we'll manipulate our list, and we'll reprint it. So if I run this again, great, we get 1. Hey, Kevin. We get
Hey.
1, or sorry, 1, because it's at position 0, great. And we get the last value, 123, that's this line.
Yeah.
Then we print listy. So that's before we manipulate or rechange our values. We change the last value to 7 and the first value to 5. We reprint it. And now you see that my list has changed. So again, we've identified how we can print at an index position and how we can change values at any index position. Does that make sense?
Yes, it has.
Cool. So knowing what we know now, let's go ahead and finish this algorithm. I want to, and I'm actually just gonna move this up, because that was kind of our practice. I want to create a function that takes in a list, use indexing to identify the first and last values. Okay. So I got this def swap, takes in some lists. Now we've identified the first and last values, and I want to now swap them. I want 123 to be at the front and 1 to be at the end. So how can I do that, knowing what we know now? And I can't make a new list.
So is it gonna be like swap listy? No, swap list.
We're swapping. We have, remember, some list is going to represent listing in this case.
Mhm.
So all I'm doing is I'm making this value, or whatever the value is at this index, equal to whatever the value of this index is, right? And then whatever the value of this index, I'm making it equal to the value of this index. So how could I do that? Let's start with just the first one. I want to change this value to whatever the value is at the end. How would I do that? Knowing what we did up here. How did I change this first value? We changed it to 5. How did I do that?
Yeah, you
So it's listy
listy bracket 0 equals
to 5.
1. Yeah, 5.
Yeah. Now
Or in this
remember,
case, it would be one.
we're taking in listy as the list and we're calling it sum list. So that's why I'm saying sum list. And you're exactly right. I said that equals 5. Now I want it to equal whatever the last value is. How did I identify what the last value was?
So it would be sum list,
Uh-huh.
um,
Let
bracket len.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to do the brackets len and then parentheses listy or sum list,
Mm-hmm.
and then -1.
Exactly. Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
That's going to change that value. Now, how would I change the last value?
So that would be sum list brackets len parentheses sum list -1
Okay.
equals or assignment operator sum list bracket 0.
Yes, Kevin. Exactly. Now, I've got a little bit of an issue here. Let's do our handy dandy T diagram. When I take in some list, let's say I call this, let's say I do this. Okay. I'm passing in listy, right? If I'm using my T diagram, let's say before we've run anything, what is listy's value? I'm just gonna put L for listy, but it represents like actual listy. What is L of 0? What is the value there? In this at position 0. And then again, remember L equals listy. I just don't want to write it out. Listy at position 0, what does that equal to?
1.
1, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And then the listy, I'm just going to put L end. I'm just going to say listy at the end. But that's, I'm talking about this entire value here, right? What is that going to be equal to when I pass this in?
7.
Not 7, because I see what you're saying. Not 7, we didn't change it, but just this one right here.
6.
Be 123, right? The first value and the last value.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's what it currently is. Now let's pretend we now pass this list into our swap sum list and we run it. And let's say again, we pretend our list at the very beginning. Change this to sum list. I just gotta just add an S. I'm gonna call this sum list. Sum list at the very beginning when it first gets it. Sum list position 0 is 1, right? And then sum list at the end, so this one is equal to 123, right? Makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, after this right here, on this first line, what am I doing? I'm reassigning the first value, right? So it's no longer 1. What is it now? What's my last value? It's not 1 anymore. It's 123, right?
Yeah.
'Cause we're swapping.
Right.
So now, because remember, computer goes line by line. When I get to line 21, and I'm saying, hey, this last value, which is currently 123, equals the first value. When it gets to this line, what is the sum list of zeros value?
That
100,
would be the
123,
right,
right? Because we've just
right.
changed it. So now, how do I get the 1 or the original value here? What do you guys think we could do? Because now I've lost that. I've already changed it here. But I need that original value so I could fully swap them.
Hmm.
What if I just said, hey, I want to remember this value some way? What's a way that I could just like temporarily store some value just to be used later on? Or how do I go ahead?
How do you store a value? You use the assignment operator, or
Mm-hmm.
you create a variable.
Yeah. So maybe we'll call it temp because we just temporarily need it. And what value do I temporarily want to hold on to?
The first one,
Exactly. Some list of 0, right? So it's going to keep track of that 1. We change it. And so instead of saying now this second one or the last one, right? Instead of saying it's equal to position 0, which now is the same, what am I going to set it equal to?
temp.
Exactly. Using a temporary variable is going to be your best friend when you are trying to swap in place or without creating a new array or list. It's a way that I can temporarily store something, but it doesn't exist outside of that. This in itself, if we run it, will, let me, I need to print it. It ran it, it just didn't do anything. Swap listy. Okay. So now we see it swapped those first and second values. Or the first and last value, right? It went in as 120 or 1, 6, 3, whatever, 123. Now it's 123, 6, 3, 9, blah, 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 1. So we have successfully swapped the first and the last value. Does that make sense? I know we talked about a lot today.
Yes, it does.
Cool. We've only got 8 minutes, so we're definitely not going to start on this one, but we'll keep building up to where we can do this one. This is, now that we're kind of in this is way more challenging. So we'll keep building up. But are there any questions on what we did here?
I understand it.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys crushed it. Great job. Great participation today, and you guys really understood it. So that was awesome. Jeffrey, anything on your end I can clarify or?
Oh, can you just repeat about the temp?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. We need to have this temporary variable because remember our Python reads line by line, right? So top to bottom. And so if we didn't have this, let's pretend that we didn't have that. Right now, let's say that the list that we passed in is 1, 4, 7, right? Just pretend instead of listy, this is what we passed in to here. Well, if we're saying some list at position 0 equals whatever the length minus 1, so this value here, then I am gonna now at this pointer, after this line is run, like if I stopped running it, it's gonna be 7, 4, 7. Right? Because we've just reassigned this first value to whatever the last value is.
Yeah.
So when I get to this line right here and I'm saying, hey, I want this value to be swapped with my original value. Well, this is all my computer has access to, right? It's already changed. So if I were to say to swap it, it's going to say, okay, or it's going to, it's just going to say, okay, this will be 7. So they're going to be the same exact thing. So what we can do is create a temporary variable. And what a temporary variable allows us to do is it allows us to temporarily hold on to that value. So when we do say, okay, now remember that value, I've already changed this first one here, but remember that value I'm holding on to, I'm going to use that to change the last one. So that now this is no longer 7, but we call it a 1. And so now we get those two values are swapped.
Yeah, understood now. Thanks,
Awesome.
you.
Yeah, of course. Happy to help. Well, awesome. I'm glad you guys understand it. Again, these things, it's weird at the beginning. It's like a new muscle, right? If you've ever worked out at the beginning, it's really hard. You're weak. And then you get to a point and you're like, okay, I can do this. I get a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger. Start recognizing, Kevin, you did a great job at like, hey, didn't we do something like this last time? That's huge, right? Because you got to keep recognizing, oh, wait, I did
Yeah.
something like this. Or here's another tool I used. I wonder if I could apply that here. Those kind of ideas. That just comes with practice. You're like, oh, I don't need a for loop, or I don't need a conditional, or I do need a while loop, or all that is coming with practice. So it seems like you guys are starting to understand, you're massaging the muscles, you're getting it used to it. Comes with time. But you guys did great today. Cool. That's all I've got. Just as a reminder, you've got 2 assignments this week: users crud modularized, and a discussion question. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Kevin, enjoy the weather. I know it's going to be nice for you. Hopefully it's nice where you're
Yeah.
at, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And I will see you guys soon.